Coming up next, this ABC Sports exclusive has been brought to you by Shearson Lehman Hutton, the financial firm for the serious investor. By AT&T. AT&T is the right choice. By Federal Express, who reminds you that it's not just a package, it's your business. And by Budweiser, proud sponsor of the 1988 U.S. Olympic team. This Bud's for you. Once again, more coming up on our post-game show. Interviews and the presentation of the Vince Lombardi Trophy. Final score from San Diego. The Washington Redskins 42 and the Denver Broncos 10. Final score in San Diego. Washington 42, Denver 10. After Denver had scored the first 10 points of the game, Washington with 5 second-quarter touchdowns, and that's a live shot. Wisconsin and M Street in our nation's capital, where right now it's about 10 minutes past 10 o'clock, and they are just getting underway.
And it's well-deserved, too. They are great football fans in Washington, and they have a lot to be proud about. They've had a lot to be proud about ever since Joe Gibbs arrived there. It's a remarkable record. He's winningest coach in terms of percentage in the NFL, and they certainly performed beautifully here today. Getting down 10-0, coming back like they did.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the last time I saw a game that had a swing like this. I mean, where Denver just explodes out of the blocks. I mean, their first play, that bomb from Elway to Natil, and then all of a sudden it's 10-0. And remember, Washington is now backed up to like their own 20-yard line, and we're talking about the importance of whether their defense can dig in and make a stand. And they did. Denver didn't score, and look what happened. I can't recall a game where it's turned around like that.
And look at the way Washington closed its year at the end of the season, the way they beat Minnesota in overtime in the regular season. They get down to Chicago at Soldier Field by 2 touchdowns on the icy day, and they win that game. They have the big goal line stand and give up only the tying field goal, then get the key touchdown last week, and today bounce back.
And able to do what they did defensively against John Elway. No one in recent weeks has been able to handle John Elway that way. Give a lot of credit to Richie Bettapone, the defensive coordinator, and the way they used both Charles Mann and Manley. And Manley was all over the football field today, but they played a containing type of defense, and it was very effective against a man who's been so hot.
You know, another thing that comes to mind is the decade of the 80s and how it belongs to the NFC in the Super Bowl, where the decade of the 70s belonged to the AFC. Pittsburgh and Miami dominated, but here in the 80s, it belongs to the Senior Conference.
Another NFC round. Right now, let's go downstairs to Keith Jackson.
Thank you very much, Al. And here it is just beginning to grow in enthusiasm and fervor. And why wouldn't it? Commissioner Pete Rozelle holding the object of the Washington Redskins' affection, the Vince Lombardi Trophy.
Well, here we have the leader of our new America's team, owner Jack Kent Cook. And Jack obviously was a scintillating performance by the Redskins. That second quarter, incidentally, most valuable player Doug Williams scored more points. He was the main driving force, of course, the second quarter than we ever scored in one quarter in the 68-year postseason history of the National Football League. Hail the Redskins.
I tell you, Pete, it's a tribute not only to a black quarterback, but to a very great quarterback. And we mustn't forget the Ricky Sanderses and all the rest of the great performances, the Timmy Smiths and so on. All I can say is that I'm terribly proud to have won 2 out of 3 Super Bowls, and the entire credit goes to Joe Gibbs, to Bobby Beathard, the assistant coaching staff, and a magnificent band of football players. I hope to be in a Super Bowl next year.
Well, I know the commissioner doesn't really fall in love with that word dynasty, Jack, but you guys ain't doing bad 2 out of 3 in the 80s.
I hope that there is the beginning of a dynasty here, and I have every reason to believe that perhaps we may suspect one. Thank you, Keith.
Well, you have had your NBA champions, you've had your NFL champions. I mean, my gosh, how long can this go on?
Well, it depends on how long I'm going to live, I think. And I've got another 25 years perhaps in me, and I hope that we have many more championships for Washington.
There's one thing before we bring in Joe Gibbs that I want you to have some mention of, and that is the man who owns a ball club who had the courage to go to his checkbook and pay $475,000 for a backup quarterback.
It was very easy to do because it was at the essence of wanting to win so badly. Had it been 875,000 or 1,875,000, I would have said the same thing to Joe, but I would have said it quite a little bit reluctantly, but nevertheless I would have said it. Go ahead, Joe, and get him. It's the greatest thing that's happened to us to have Doug here. He's coming over here. He's a good friend of mine. He's a good friend of everybody on the club, and he's a real leader. But the best leader on the club is my dear friend Joe Gibbs, our head coach.
Thank you, Jack. Congratulations to you.
Joe?
Here comes Joe. Congratulations. It's marvelous.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cook.
Dear
Appreciate
Joe.
everything, your support and everything. We're thrilled. Thank you, Commissioner. I feel very humble right now. From a Redskins standpoint, I feel very humble, and I'm just thrilled to be a part of this. Hey, I thank God I have a chance to work in an organization like this, have an owner like this, and all those things that support me, the coaching staff and our fans, and it really was a team effort for us, so I appreciate it very much.
Somebody had to put all the nuts and bolts and pieces together, and I just have to say nobody's done it better in the 80 than you have.
Well, I think it's a tribute to our organization. It's from top to bottom. It starts with the big boss, and Bobby Beathard gets the players, and John Cook, and everybody in our organization. Mr. Cook feels the same way as the fans and our coaching staff that Mr. Cook got from me. And I'm probably the most dependent guy out of all of them, and I just think very thankful. Thank God, like I said, that I have a chance to be a part of this, and we're thrilled. Everybody in our Redskin organization. I'm the most thrilled for everybody that got to enjoy it. And Mr. Cook is too. All of our fans and everybody that came out here.
That's great, Joe. It is said all society owes an individual as an opportunity, and we had a man today exercise that brilliantly. We'll be visiting with the man who did it, the MVP, Doug Williams, a man of opportunity, and they are whooping it up in Georgetown.
You're on, George!
This ABC Sports Exclusive being brought to you by Bud Light, proud sponsor of the 1988 U.S. Olympic team, and by IBM and the IBM Personal System 2 family.
We'll have Doug Williams for you in just a moment. But right now, let's switch over to Lynn Swan in the Denver locker room and Coach Dan Reeves.
Thank you very much, Keith. Coach Reeves, obviously you're greatly disappointed. When you look at this ball game, what are your views?
Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate the Washington Redskins. I don't think there's any question that they're world champions. They played a tremendous football game. We just couldn't stop them, Lynn. I think it was 5 straight drives that they scored. A big play, of course, to I believe it was Sanders early in the game. We had them 10-0, and they go 80 yards very quickly. And in the next 4 drives, we couldn't stop them. Whenever you run the football and have a rusher gain that much yardage, I think it was over 200 yards that Tim Smith gained. You just can't win championships that way. So my hat's off to them. We didn't play as well as certainly I would like to, but it's very difficult for anybody, I think, to beat Washington today.
Let's go back to the first quarter. First play of the game for your offense, you score a touchdown. You get 10 points up very quickly. It seems like you're riding a wave. Was that an emotional surge?
Well, I think we certainly got some speed on our offense, and we tried to take advantage of it. And John makes a great throw, and Ricky makes a great catch. But, we couldn't capitalize. We had to come away with 3 points on the next drive, and that was disappointing. And then the next time we got down there, we're in field goal range, we get trapped and puts us out of field goal range. You just, and then all of a sudden they got it turned, and we just couldn't turn it back around.
They seemed to keep running the same running play. And they were pulling the offsides guard on the option, on the counter. Was there something that was just making that play work, was not getting there quick enough?
Well, it wasn't any secret. That's what they run all the time. We worked very hard on that play. We thought we had done a good job in practice, but you got to give them credit. They got a great offensive line. They did a good job, and Smith found the hole, and he's got tremendous explosion. I just think you got to give them credit. They're a great football team, and we just did not do the things that we had to do to win.
As a whole, physically, how'd your team come out?
Well, we banged up a little bit. Dave Studdard injured his knee, and Tony Lilly was hurt. But I think other than that, it's more pride than anything else.
Okay. Coach, thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you.
All right, Keith.
All right, Swanee, thanks very much. And I want to turn right now to the MVP, Doug Williams, who set 2 Super Bowl records, tied 2 others. And the obvious question is, though he doesn't show it, this has to be the highest moment of his life.
Well, there's no doubt about it, Keith. You know, as a professional football player, to go to the Super Bowl, #1 is great, but in order to win it, that's even better. And I've been in the league, been playing football now for 10 years, and I just got an opportunity to get to the Super Bowl, and the most important thing to me was winning it.
May I say to you, sir, I think you have handled your personal week of history nobly.
Well, you know, the thing I had to say to myself, first of all, I didn't come here with the Washington Redskins as a black quarterback. I came here as the quarterback of the Washington Redskins and to play a football game to win it. Now, whatever happened after that, you know, I can't control anyway. So the most important thing to me was to go out and perform up to my abilities and try to win the football game.
I talked to Coach Eddie Robinson last night. He said he's a man who can stand tall in adversity. I'm not worried about him. Nothing happened in the first quarter, and then suddenly you were hurt, sat out of play, came back on a sore leg, and blew it open.
Well, the thing about our team, the Washington Redskins, a lot of people don't give us credit, but all year long we've been the type of team we get behind, never let down. And I think that's the good part of this football team, the fact that we still believe we're going to win the football game no matter what happens.
You can now go home to that acreage, sit down, stick up your feet, and listen to the bird sings in Zachary, Louisiana.
You know, the good thing about that, you know, this week I had an opportunity to talk to Dan Fouts, had an opportunity to talk to Jim Hart. You know, those guys were great quarterbacks in this league and never had an opportunity to play in the Super Bowl. So, you know, I look at myself and say I'm blessed to have had an opportunity to play in the Super Bowl.
Congratulations. Enjoy your off season because you've earned it.
Thank you, Keith.
We'll be back with more, including a brief conversation with Coach Joe Gibbs in just a moment. One more moment for a couple of questions with Coach Joe Gibbs, who is waiting to go outside and jump straight up. But, Joe, today you...
I have to jump off float up today.
Doug Williams has been a power man inside because one has that great arm to deliver the ball. Today you go outside for 250 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Well, Doug really has the bigger part of this year, and particularly in the playoffs, been an inside guy. He likes inside routes, and today, though, it just seemed like he kept hooking up on the outside. And I think the Denver, you know, was playing the inside pumps and things like that. And I think it gave him a little more on the outside. And so Doug took it. He did a real good job. I felt like all day long it was a great game for him.
In the midst of the celebration, I must ask one mildly distracting question, and it's of the rumor form. Green Bay, is there consideration there?
For who?
You.
No, absolutely not. Not for me. Mr. Cook has got me on a contract here. Unless he wants to get rid of me, I'm going to be right here with the Redskins. This is where I belong.
So we put to rest the rumor. Joe Gibbs, congratulations. Enjoy the offseason. Wonderful.
Thank you so much. And again, just thanks to everybody out there, the Redskins family that helped get us here. Thank you so much. We enjoyed it. We loved it. San Diego was great for us all week. They were fantastic. God bless you.
Thank you. Now let's join Mike Adamle and some happy folks.
Well, Keith, for anybody who watched the game, they know that MVP Doug Williams had a whole lot of help in running back Timmy Smith, who broke Marcus Allen's Super Bowl record, and also Ricky Sander, who broke Lynn Swann's receiving record in the Super Bowl. First of all, Timmy, you know, great athletes always are never afraid to dream big. But in all your wildest dreams, did you dream that you're going to have a day like this, 204 yards and 22 carries?
Well, basically all season long, I've been having these bad dreams about one day I'm gonna score one. So happened to be this is a day, and I didn't know I was that close to breaking Marcus Allen records to the second half.
This is more yardage than you gained throughout the regular season.
You're right, and I just like to thank God for giving me the second chance. You know, I was up and down in my junior and senior year in college, and now all of a sudden I'm bouncing back.
Dan Deerdorf was saying throughout the game that the Denver Broncos just could not stop, no matter how many times they saw it throughout the films, the counter gap, and that worked to great success today.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about that. We got some great offensive linemen in front of us, and, you know, once we get going, and I believe in my offensive line to get the job done, and they believe in me, and that's what happened today.
Ricky, much has been made about USFL refugees and their ability to play in the National Football League. I think you erased any doubts whatsoever.
Yeah, I think that's true. You know, we have quite a few guys on this team from the USFL, and we played well today. You know, we came out with a victory.
Your success, why was the Redskin passing attack so successful today?
Well, Tim was running the ball well. The offensive lineman was giving Doug the protection that we needed. And anytime you get a running game going like that, you're automatically going to open up the passing game. And I have to give it all to the offensive line.
Well, Ricky and Timmy, cherish it. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Let's go back to Keith Jackson.
Well, the celebration is on in Washington, D.C. It's on in Zachary, Louisiana. It's just beginning for the men who fought the war in San Diego. Back after this commercial and a word from our local stations.
We're back in the Denver locker room with John Elway. John, tell me what you were thinking, how you felt when you threw the first pass for the touchdown.
Well, we felt good. We felt, you know, coming in, we had a lot of confidence in our offense, and you know, we came out and wanted to take a chance right off the bat and made the big play, and you know, that got us going. And then, you know, we moved the ball well in the first quarter, and you know, we had some opportunities, got a field goal out of it, but didn't get in the end zone.
You're up by 10. Can you pick a moment in the game where it all changed?
Well, I don't know. Sometime in that second quarter, I think that, you know, that next drive, they started making some big plays, and they kept coming and coming. And, you know, the next time we looked up, it was they had 35 points on the board. So, you know, it was just that whole second quarter that stopped us, and we didn't answer the bell when they did score.
You've always handled pressure well, all kinds of pressure. Was it any different in that second half coming out?
You bet. I think anytime you get down to a team like the Redskins and you're down 35 or 25 points like we were, you know, they're going to tie their ears back and come after you. And, you know, with those two great ends outside and those big guys pushing inside, it makes it that much more tougher to throw the football, and especially when they know we're going to throw.
When you're looking downfield, did you see anything differently, anything out of the ordinary happening?
No, not really. They played exactly what we thought. They were going to play man. The thing that they did do is they did a good job jamming people outside and really kind of throwing the rhythm off of the passing game, and, you know, we're having a tough time. And if we can't get out the line of scrimmage clean, that those big guys come, and it's tough in the passing game.
Well, we won't pretend that we know how it feels to stand in your shoes, but we certainly do appreciate your politeness and your cooperation, even in the losing efforts.
You bet, and I congratulate the Washington Redskins.
Thank you. Keith?
All right, Swanee. Now, I'm gonna ignore these two great, huge, hulking men here for a moment to take you right down to this fella. This young man's name is Dave Butts. Is that heavy?
Yeah, no.
You've had quite a day. You've been down on that field. You've watched your dad and his teammates. It's going to be a day to remember, huh?
Yes, sir.
I bet it is. Well, you hold on to that. One other thing, that when you looked at John Elway, you could see the lumps and bumps rising, the blue spots coming, because John took a whipping today, and these two big guys had a major, major part of it. Dexter zeroed in on him one time and had him in his sights, and he went around you and gone, and from then on, you really got after him.
Well, that's the ability John Elway has. He's very elusive, and I think that's a contributor to John Elway, because he's transformed himself from a great player, from a great athlete to a great player. And I tell you, I was a little over-aggressive, and the coach told me to settle down and just relax and go out and play football. I want to take that kill shot. There's no question about it.
Well, Dexter Manley, you have gone from being a good athlete to a great player.
Well, you know, I just thank the higher power. You know, I've had a lot of ups and downs, and the thing about it, I believe in myself, and my teammates believe in me, and I have a good family that support me, and I think that's what it's all about.
You know, this guy, you can tell, he does radio, what, 5 days a week? Do you do it on the road? I mean, he's destined to replace me. You know that.
Well, no, I work, you know, I do some things with DC 101, and it's just a great tribute. You know, you can't play football forever. I think you have to start having some other alternatives and looking at other things what you want to do.
And this huge mountain of a man standing here, you know what his hobby is? Carving delicate duck wooden decoys. Someday I'm going to come by and make you give me one. Congratulations on a great game, Dave.
Thank you very much, sir. And if you show up at my house, you got one.
All right.
All right?
All the best for you, and
thank you.
Jack Kent Cooke wants a dynasty. You guys are the cornerstone of it. Good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
You know, like it goes, the wonder years are coming up, but remember this: Braves on the warpath. Fight for old DC. That's the way it goes, right?
Never one bites the dust.
This ABC Sports Exclusive being brought to you by the final score in Super Bowl XXII, Washington 42, Denver 10. We hope you enjoyed the day. You're going to be hearing a lot about a special new comedy on ABC called The Wonder Years, and those who've seen it say it's great. There's a special preview tonight right after we conclude Super Bowl coverage, so stay with us for The Wonder Years. Saturday, ABC's Professional Bowlers Tour presents the $140,000 Bowlers Journal Florida Open. Then ABC's Wide World of Sports features the IBF World Lightweight Championship as Vinny Pazienza defends his title against Greg Hogan. plus coverage of Women's World Cup skiing. And next Sunday, ABC Sports presents a live 2-hour special, Calgary 88, the Olympic adventure begins. Also, ABC's college basketball action tips off with Purdue meeting Michigan in a Big Ten showdown. This has been a presentation of ABC Sports, recognized around the world as the leader in sports television.
A promotional.
This is the 9 News post-game report.
It is a humiliating time for the Denver Broncos after a spectacular beginning. The Broncos are now 0-3 in the Super Bowl, and each has been a lopsided defeat. It will be a long offseason for Dan Reeves and the Broncos and all of their fans who just a few hours ago were delirious and confident. Hello, I'm Ed Sardella.
And I'm Ward Lucas. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Well, this is indeed D-Day for the Broncos, and that means disaster, debacle, and defeat. What other words?
I think
depressing.
That'll do it. Very depressing, extremely depressing. For the next half hour or so, we're going to bring you our own post-game show, including, we hope, a chance to talk to some of the Broncos in the locker room. For now, though, we want to check in with Steve Alvarez and Tom Green outside Jack Murphy Stadium in San Diego. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Ed. I think you summed it up best when you said humiliating, a horribly humiliating second quarter for the Denver Broncos. Tom Green is here with me, and we've been talking about the fact that the defense had a tremendous letdown, but this is not just a loss attributed to the defense. The offense also didn't do the things they were supposed to do.
As the offense started out so well, they just couldn't move the football on the Redskin defense, and you can give them credit, and you can also see some flaws in the Denver offense. The way they performed throughout the last 3 quarters of the football game cost them the football game. And what's going to be lost in all this as far as fans in Denver and Colorado is that the Washington Redskins on a record-setting day had one of the great quarters in all of football history, 5 touchdowns. It was an amazing second quarter for the Redskins.
Well, you know, you look at what happened in the past 2 Super Bowls, and I think the Broncos defense has made 2 good quarterbacks, not great quarterbacks, but 2 good quarterbacks look like the best on the planet. And I think you have to question some of the defensive philosophy when you go in there, but at the same time, that's the same defensive philosophy that got them to 2 straight Super Bowls. So you wonder where the flaw is.
Well, it may not be the best defensive team the Broncos have brought to the Super Bowl, but it probably was the best football team they brought to the Super Bowl. However, now you look back in history, they lost 27-10 in Super Bowl XII. Last year, 39-20, and this year it's gotten even worse. This is everyone's saying in the media area afterwards. This is going to be a tough loss for the Broncos to come back from. Dan Reeves and his staff have a lot of questions to answer, and Joe Collier is going to be asked a lot of questions, along with all of his assistant coaches and the entire Bronco defensive unit. Where do they go from here?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Broncos were much more confident going into this football game than they were last year, and everything started going their way. And one interesting point that Dan Deerdorf made during the game, the Redskins were running that counter trap and running off tackle. He said the Broncos are acting like they've never seen the play, and they knew the Redskins were going to run it about 80% of the time.
Yeah, we're going to try and get some insight into that when we go into the locker rooms with Mike Nolan in just a few minutes. But for now, let's go back to Denver and Ward and Ed.
All right, gentlemen, do you think you focus on the injuries and getting everybody back healthy, or do you focus on the need for at least a partial house cleaning at this point?
I don't know if you want to make a house cleaning, but you got to look to bolster up, especially the defensive front. If you can't get the heat on the quarterback, which they didn't do, you know, I know their defensive secondary has been beat up, but all pro guys in the secondary are going to get beat if a guy can stand back there all day and throw.
I think the injuries are part of it, but there's also a philosophical change the Broncos are going to have to make. They started to make it last year in the offseason towards a more aggressive defense. It seems to be the mode of the 80s in the NFL, the successful mode anyway. And the Broncos are still considered a passive defense, a finesse defense that tries to contain you instead of attack you. And I think we're going to see a flow more towards that attacking defense that's so successful in the league.
Yeah, they've always been with that bend but don't break philosophy, but tonight they broke severely in the second quarter. Ed?
All right, we'll talk some more a little bit later. Please stand by. Thanks very much. Ward?
Well, the last 2 weeks in Denver have been a lot more fun than the last 4 hours. A lot of people thought this was the Broncos' year, of course. For the first few minutes of the game, it looked like it was all going to come true. It looked pretty good at that point, but then it all fell apart.
Kathy Chin has been watching the game with Bronco fans at Zhang's Brewing Company near Mile High Stadium, and I imagine that there are long faces there tonight, except for yours.
Yes, there were. There are still some, as you can see, some diehard fans left here at Zhang's Brewery, but nothing like it was when the game first started a long time ago. One of the fans that is here is Joe Gable. Joe, are you depressed about the end of this game?
I feel sorry for the Denver Bronco organization. I kind of felt they were prepared going out there. I think Super Bowl just kind of proves that during Super Bowl it's no different than AFC championship games or the regular season, that any team can upset the other one on a given day, and the Redskins just upset the Broncos. And I hope someday that John Elway, Dan Reeves, and the Bronco organization can just come out champs one time.
Do you still support them?
I think Denver and the state of Colorado will back up the Broncos no matter what. And I think it's a menu for the Broncos to work on for next year. They'll be back.
Okay. Thank you very much. And everybody, do you still support the Broncos? Yeah. They still support the Broncos no matter what, even though it was 42-10. Live from Zhang's Brewery, Kathy Chin, 9 Sports.
All right, thank you very much, Kathy. You know, you have to look at the plane ride back that they're going to have from San Diego. It's going to be one long ride.
And the parade afterward is going to be kind of painful as well, both for fans and for the team tomorrow. For other Bronco fans in Denver, the game started out fast and fun and then turned into a painful nightmare. Kerry Manley has more on how people here first enjoyed and then endured a Bronco bashing.
At first, the sound of orange thunder was deafening. In the first quarter, the Broncos came on strong, and so did the Denver fans. Children at Bronco parties throughout the city came prepared in full orange and blue attire, and so did lots of grown-ups, all ready to enjoy the Super Bowl, including indoor tailgating. At some churches, there were also some quiet Bronco celebrations. But all too soon, the only people doing all the cheering were local Redskins fans.
No way, Elway. Redskins are #1.
Watch out, Broncos. The Skins are going to take it. As the Broncos began to sink in the second quarter at the Columbine Nursing Home in Wheat Ridge, folks tried to keep the spirit.
When they come into the first, when they started, they got a touchdown. And
is it getting depressing?
Well, they're not playing so good now.
Terrible. It's horrible. I don't even want to think about it. I mean, it doesn't make it any fun. They have to win because that's what they're there for.
But in the end, it was a Bronco fiasco. For the second year in a row, the fans and the team have come so far, but once again, not far enough. Kerry Manley, 9 News.
We should be in the Broncos locker room very soon now, and when we come back, we'll take a look at how some other people spent Super Bowl Sunday.
That anybody in Denver is happy about today's game, but for Redskin fans, couldn't have been better.
Dave Statter of our sister station in Washington, WUSA, is joining us now from Annie Oakley's bar in Georgetown. Undoubtedly, it's a lot happier out there than it is here.
Well, first of all, guys, our condolences. We've been on the other side, too. We know what it's like. I'm offering the condolences because I'm sure these people outside in Georgetown really aren't worried about you all at the moment. They're worried about having a good time. As you can see, we have thousands of people in the heart of Georgetown. Georgetown has become the place for celebration in Washington after major events such as Redskins victories and the victories of the Georgetown basketball team, and also Halloween. It's become the place to party, and as you can see, they're partying tonight. We've got people that are climbing light posts. We've got people that are just acting out every fantasy of their life, and their fantasies were acted out by the Redskins tonight. Up and down Wisconsin Avenue and M Street, the main intersection in Georgetown, all you can see is a sea of people. The police are out here. They've made a number of arrests, a handful at this point, for such things as drunk in public and not listening to the orders of the police, but so far no major incidents. These people are partying. We don't know how long they're going to party. They're going to be out here for a long time. We're going to be out here for a long time. Once again, this is the scene in Georgetown in Washington, D.C. These people will probably go all night. We're going to sit here and watch them. Ward and Ed?
Dave, we had a very confident week and 2 weeks before the Super Bowl game, and so therefore the letdown is even more depressing now. What was it like in Washington in terms of the expectation for this game?
Well, if you watch the first quarter and the reaction of the fans when you all went up on the scoreboard, everybody said, uh-oh, this is the end for us. But things changed in the second quarter. This week, of course, has been very exciting in Washington. Everybody was confident. It was shaken a bit in that first quarter, but once the second quarter rolled around, that was it as far as these fans were concerned.
All right, Dave, enjoy, and congratulations to all of you, and thank you for the condolences. Maybe we can turn it around in years to come.
Okay.
Hundreds of Redskins fans who live in Denver are getting revenge for 2 weeks of pig roasts and ridicule.
Kerry Manley is with some of those fans at Packard's Bar in Aurora right now. Kerry?
Well, you know, I'm glad I'm with the few people in Denver who are happy right now. This is a torture for me personally, but you have to congratulate them. Can you sum up the feeling? Denver fans haven't had a chance to know it. What's it like to win the Super Bowl?
It's great. It's the second time we won the Super Bowl. Denver's lost.
Okay, don't rub it in. Don't rub it in, but sum up the joy for you.
It's great. It's fantastic. You know, I've been taking a lot of ribbon from my friends all week. I said, hey, the Skins are going to win their second Super Bowl, and they said, no, Denver's going to win their first, but look what happened.
Okay, now I know you guys have a lot of dancing to do. We'll let you return to it, and for now, this is Kerry Manley reporting live at Packard's.
Okay, Kerry. Doesn't look safe. You better get out. All right, we're going to try to get to the locker room here in a couple of minutes. We'll be right back.
Livelihood lies beneath the peaceful soil.
It's not a big deal. It's part of the landscape.
The Broncos have lost 42-10. It was an incredible game. The first few minutes of this ball game were just incredible. Everybody in our newsroom was euphoric about the way it started, and then the turnaround, it just is a shock.
Well, so much hope, too. We, of course, were favored by 3 or 4 points, at least as far as the people in Vegas were concerned. It looked like it was going to be great, didn't it?
It really did. It really did.
A disaster. We're going to have to live with this disaster now for another year.
We're going to talk to Dan Dennison. I'm not real sure where he is, but Dan, you tell us. Where are you?
Okay, Mike, go ahead and shoot tape. Now, where behind me you can see
tape.
74.
Tony, I've never seen a game that changed like this one did. Where you get.
All right, we're on Dan Dennison's video, and you heard Mike Nolan's audio under that, and I think he was talking to Tony Lilly, if I'm not mistaken. We're going to try to get the patches pulled out and put back in the right holes here in just a minute. Win or lose, the Super Bowl is like a national holiday. There are thousands of parties all over the country. Some are black tie and tail affairs, and others are a little bit more down to earth. Lori Harosa was at one of the latter today, just south of Denver.
It's not sun-drenched San Diego, but snow-covered Sedalia. For some folks who live in the area, the Matchbox Bar on the edge of town is the next best thing to being there.
I've been here many times. It's better than going steady.
Every Sunday for 11 years, Jim Campbell has opened his bar for Bronco fans.
Look at these people. Look at them. They're crazy.
Kill! We're small, but we're mighty.
The original Three Amigos.
Out of the shotgun, which is their basic formation. And Elway going for the fire.
Right on the money, girl.
They really go ape here. And for every Bronco touchdown, every fan gets another shot of orange.
All right. For Didier, and as Frank said, it's getting to be Didier time. Touchdown.
But then the tide turned. But win or lose, the faithful fans of the Matchbox Bar stand by their team.
The Washington Redskins 42 and the Denver Broncos.
Lori Harosa, 9 News.
I think they had a dry night there. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Well, Dan Dennison was with some of the fans today at Jack Murphy Stadium. We tried to get to him a moment ago. We're going to try once again. Dan, you undoubtedly saw a lot of ecstatic Redskin fans.
Oh, certainly there were a lot of ecstatic Redskin fans, Ward, particularly in the second three quarters or the last three quarters of the ball game. No doubt thousands of fans here, and as we've already seen and heard, a lot of fans back home in Colorado will not be celebrating with the vigor that they had hoped for. Instead of happy parties tonight, Bronco fans who traveled nearly 1,000 miles to San Diego for Super Bowl XXII will be drowning their sorrows.
The Orange of Denver, ecstatic during the first minutes of the game.
And Elway going for the bomb right in the...
Oh, I think it's great. I love it.
Their optimism continued. Dressed in their Sunday Super Bowl best, they stayed spirited.
Go, go, go! It's the Hogbusters. Hogbusters, you bet. We're ready.
Third down, short 2. Long 1 from the 28. Ryan for Clark. Touchdown.
Until a disastrous second period. Five touchdowns later, the Skins lead 35-10. Bronco Maniacs appearing worried, sad, frustrated, but not ready to give up.
Come on, Johnny. No, I'm the kicker. Come on.
That defense better get busy. Look at it before it's over. Okay. Pause of that.
But this was not the day. The Broncos' third Super Bowl appearance was not charmed.
Man, come on. Let's go.
The hopes of an entire city, a whole state dashed, along with the dreams of thousands of loyal, wishful fans.
Just happy to be there. Last year, I was extremely disappointed. I think this year I'm devastated. It's worse.
His feelings, no doubt, shared by thousands of people here in San Diego, as well as lots of Bronco fans back in Colorado, many of them realizing the inevitable perhaps left Jack Murphy Stadium in the first minutes of the second half. A lot of Redskin fans still in the parking lots here celebrating, a lot of them leaving for the proverbial watering hole for those celebratory post-game parties. Live from San Diego, this is Dan Dennison.
Dan, one of the interesting things at Pasadena before the game last year was watching the ticket activity as it got closer to game time and the people who had the tickets are trying to sell them. Did you get a chance to observe some of that in San Diego?
We sure did. In fact, this morning on the way over to the stadium, there was one lane of traffic that was moving very, very slow because there were both people trying to sell tickets and people trying to buy tickets. We didn't get a chance to stop to see what prices they were asking. I did hear one fellow here at the stadium who was trumpeting $1,000 tickets. I doubt very seriously 15 minutes before the game that he was able to sell those.
I think last year some of those tickets right before the game were going for $50 or $60. The price came down that far just in the last few minutes.
And of course, after it starts, it comes down further than that.
Now, had the Bronco fans known what the score would be by halftime, they would have paid people to take the tickets, I think.
Your reactions about a Super Bowl spectacle. I believe this is your first one, if I'm not mistaken. What did you think, Dan?
It was really exciting, kind of anticlimactic certainly this afternoon, and I think a lot of fans who came here have anticlimactic feelings as well. But I talked to a gentleman from Denver just a couple of minutes ago. He said he's going to go play golf in this sunny Southern California weather tomorrow and certainly not going to let today's loss spoil his vacation. I'm sure there's a fair number of them who feel exactly that way.
All right, thanks very much, Dan. I appreciate it.
The frustration of it all.
One of the interesting discussions that Ward and I have carried on here through the commercials is what Bronco fans are going to be like after this is over. I don't think that we've come even close to the euphoria and the height of Bronco mania that we had in 1977 and 78. And it seems like it's dropped off a little bit each year as the Super Bowl has become less of a novelty for Denver fans, and you have to wonder what's going to happen next year.
There was an interesting column this morning, I believe, in the Rocky Mountain News about the maturing process that's going to be going on with Denver fans. Had we won, it would be old hat, Bronco mania, and perhaps we would see it toned down from that standpoint. If we lost, a lot of people are going to be disappointed with the team, perhaps tone down the Bronco mania anyway.
And there's a certain degree of expectation, I suppose, there too. We've been to 2 in a row now, and there's an expectation of doing well next season as well. So, things to watch in the months ahead.
We'll be right back. Stay with us. A lot of people are wondering just what went wrong this afternoon. It's almost become a Bronco trademark to start out very strong, but unfortunately, sometimes we don't end up that way.
That's right. And to talk more about that, we're going to go back out to Tom Green and Steve Alvarez from outside the stadium. You want to call this a bad day for John Elway, or do you want to call it Washington accomplishing what it set out to do, and that is putting pressure on Elway?
You know, I think unless you are involved in both teams' philosophical sessions, coaching breakdowns, all those things, you can't really determine if Washington schemed to beat Elway or if he just didn't have a good ball game. But what you start to worry about is the psychological makeup of this team now. Now they're getting to be known as the Minnesota Vikings of the 80s. The Vikings never won a Super Bowl, although they went 4 times. Now the Broncos 0 for 3 in Super Bowl, Steve.
Yeah, and this obviously the most devastating because, as I said before, I think they came into this one with the most confidence. You talked about the Redskins' defensive John Elway. I think it was a combination, first of all, of the Broncos' offense going cold. It was a major factor when Dave Studdard went down with a knee injury because he was doing the job on Dexter Manley, and poor Keith Karts came in as a rookie. They picked on him, and it obviously was effective. Then after that, John Elway hit a cold spell. As you said, he started throwing high, he started throwing low. He was rushing some passes. When he got back in the rhythm, the Broncos offense was not in sync with him. He had to run for his life. On the other side of the ball, the Redskins protected Doug Williams, gave him all the time in the world to find the receivers, and he ate the Broncos up. The defensive secondary has been decimated by injuries all throughout the playoffs. They stepped in with the backup guys. This time, they were burned badly, not just in the second quarter, but throughout the entire game.
I don't think there's any question the play of the secondaries was the key of the game. I think the Broncos secondary did look poor, and the Redskins secondary seemed to do 2 things that you have to do to beat John Elway. One is the same thing you got to do with any quarterback, excellent coverage, and boy, they had it on everyone. John had to look around. They seemed to also confuse him a bit. I think they made some changes here and there, adjustments that got it going. So let's take a look at the highlights of Super Bowl XXII.
It was a highly charged atmosphere, obviously, when the Broncos took the field this afternoon for the opening lineups. Everybody pumped up, ready to go for their 2nd consecutive Super Bowl, and it became electric on the Broncos' first play from scrimmage. John Elway going back, he goes up top, and he goes 56 yards to the rookie, Ricky Nattiel, for a touchdown, and just like that, that explosive Bronco offense was up 7-0.
And it looked like things were going to get better for the Broncos. They go to that play where Steve Sewell throws the ball back to John Elway, throw a little behind him, still 24 yards down to the Washington 12, helps set up a Rich Carlos 24-yard field goal. 6 minutes into the game, the Broncos led at 10-0 and looked to be rolling.
Well, it looked like they were doing nothing wrong, and they were doing everything to shut the Redskins down, but at the start of the second quarter, the Redskins got hot. Doug Williams goes to Ricky Sanders. He beats Mark Haynes on the man coverage. He's gone 80 yards for the touchdown, and they're right back in it suddenly at 10-7.
And this was the start of the second quarter that rewrote the NFL Super Bowl history book. Doug Williams on a 3rd and 2 goes 27 yards to Gary Clark diving into the end zone. It's 14-10.
And then Timmy Smith, the rookie, goes 58 yards. After Rich Carlos missed the field goal, Smith, who had a career afternoon in his first season, goes in for the score. It was 21-10. At that point, Denver was still in the game, but it didn't last long because, as you said, the Redskins were all whirled in that quarter.
After Mark Haynes dropped a chance at an interception, it's Doug Williams again, his 3rd touchdown of the afternoon, 49 yards to Ricky Sanders, who had a great day. 28-10 Washington. Just before halftime, it's Williams again, this time to Didier with 1:04 to go. 35-10, and that was the score at the half. The Broncos had to be shaking their heads going into the locker room.
Well, not only that, but the Redskins didn't play like a team that was up by 35 points. Timmy Smith running in for the touchdown. It was 42-10, and doing the victory dance as he deservedly does. John Elway dejected on the sideline, going home with his 2nd consecutive Super Bowl loss. And there's Joe Gibbs with his first ever victory over the Denver Broncos.
Final score, 42-10. The Redskins are the world champions in Super Bowl XXII.
So the Denver Broncos were their most devastating Super Bowl loss, and as you and I were talking about a few minutes ago, there's a very good possibility they could come back again because there is nobody in the AFC that is dominant. The Broncos are as good as anyone, but you begin to wonder what they have to do to beat an NFC opponent in the Super Bowl. What they do defensively has not worked in the past 2 Super Bowls, and what they do offensively has not been nearly as effective as it has against AFC opponents. So I don't know what the answer is for the Denver Broncos. I think they have to start defensively up front, maybe continue that more aggressive approach. As you said, they changed somewhat this season, but then you get into big games, and a lot of coaches like to play it close to the vest. They don't want to take the chance, and I think the 3-man rush is something that's made Doug Williams this year and Phil Simms last year look like all-planet quarterbacks. You got to put more heat on it. They put it on John Elway, and it obviously was effective.
You also have to, as we said earlier, examine the play of the secondary and see where changes could be made there. Mark Haynes, who had a very good season in pass coverage, got beat on the big play early on that got the Redskins on the scoreboard. Tony Lilly struggled today. Just seems like everyone back there, the injuries this year and everything, it was just a terrible day in the deep secondary for the Broncos. And we're hoping to go to Mike Nolan in the Bronco locker room in just a few minutes. But for now, let's return to Denver and Ward and Ed.
There's been criticism of the fact that the Bronco team is built around one man, and that's John Elway. Dan Reeves, I think, has tried to deflect that criticism. In fact, I think the criticism has made him very angry at times. Are we going to see a revival of that sort of critique of the Broncos' game plan?
Yeah, I'm sure that will be very much brought up, that the Broncos are a one-man team, at least as far as the national media is concerned, and that one man had a very bad game today, or at least was forced to by the Redskins, and that was the reason that a lot of the national media will point towards the Broncos losing.
Yeah, I think John Elway will take this loss very hard because he's a guy who likes to be in the heat of things. He likes to be the man to come through in the clutch, and he's done it so many times, unfortunately, and you can't count last year because the Giants' defense was just overwhelming. But unfortunately for John Elway, after so many brilliant games down the stretch in the second half for the Broncos, he had a cold day. It happened to be in the Super Bowl. And for a team that relies so much on one man, you know, the answer is pretty obvious what's going to happen.
And the other thing when you go with one man is if he's off, you need guys to pick up for him. And today the defense couldn't do it, and other people on his team weren't ready to pick up the slack, and it fell by the wayside, and the Redskins were able to roll to an easy win.
Steve, I want to comment on your comment of a minute ago where you said the Broncos could come back. It's so hard to repeat. The Broncos have done it this year. Look what happened to the Giants last year, and you have to think that a loss like this has the potential of being very divisive.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think personnel-wise that there's any problem with the Broncos being able to contend in the AFC. I think you're absolutely right. Mentally, you'll have to wait a long time to see what effect this is going to have on this football team. A crushing defeat, and these guys, you know, the Redskins were in the Super Bowl 4 years ago, and they lost, a devastating loss to the Raiders, but only 1/3 of the current squad was here for that loss. Well, virtually all the Broncos were here for last year's. You got 45 guys who have experienced the ultimate loss 2 years in a row, and that has to take its toll as to what they think of themselves as football players, whether or not they think they are legitimate contenders for a world championship.
Yeah, I think they can go one of two ways here, and it's the same for the Cleveland Browns. I said this after the Browns game. You can go one of two ways. You can either set your goals to become invincible and never allow this to happen again, or you can have some psychological cracking and some divisiveness inside the team that eventually leads to the destruction and the descent of the team's quality.
Let's also not forget what the Broncos did to get to this Super Bowl. They had more, I think any other team in the National Football League would have crumbled with the injuries they had to their starters. And you looked on the sidelines today, you saw Billy Bryan was on the sidelines, Gerald Wilhite, Mike Harden, who has been their best player in the secondary. I mean, they had a number of guys, not just today, but throughout the season who have been injured, and you wonder what difference they could have made today.
Gentlemen, it's just like last January. It seems like all of the luster of a great season is lost in a Super Bowl game that just wasn't very close.
How about priorities in the draft? What do we need?
I think what we talked about, an attacking defensive player, a dominating defensive player, someone who can step in and make big plays. They talk about a big back. I think the Bronco running game was effective. I think the offense can be a good one. I think they just need some monster players, some guys who can go in and you know, take names. They're tough players.
I agree with you. You know, so much of the defense now is centered around a guy like Carl Mecklenburg. Well, that's fine, but then the offense starts to generate what they do based on where Carl is. You need somebody else to take some of the pressure off him. You do need a top big contender who can come in there and force an offense to do something different. Until they get that, things aren't going to change very much, and until they get that player, I don't think Joe Collier will change his philosophy all that much. Although Dan Reeves may put more pressure on him as he did after last year's Super Bowl. Dan Reeves and Joe Collier had a lot of talking in the offseason about making it a more attacking defense, which they did somewhat, but they did not do that today, and I'm curious why they didn't do it in the biggest game of their season.
It's a lot like what you say about getting a player to balance out Mecklenburg, like what the Giants were able to do with Lawrence Taylor. They got Carl Banks, a player to balance their defense. So we're going to hear a lot about the Bronco defense and Joe Collier and his attitudes, hopefully in the Bronco locker room in just a few minutes.
All right.
Thanks for the analysis.
Okay. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Celebrations ran the gamut in San Diego today, from a ritzy party at a tent city set up outside the stadium to old-fashioned tailgating in the parking lot.
Monica Gale was at a few of those parties, and she's going to tell us about them. Monica?
Well, Ed and Ward, fans got an early start on their Super Bowl celebrations. Many were here outside Jack Murphy Stadium as early as 9 o'clock this morning to begin the pregame festivities. This was one way to prime yourself for the game, but it was by invitation only. A lot of companies footed the bill for private pregame get-togethers in tents, complete with linen tablecloths and waiters serving champagne. For one guest from Germany, this was the only way to go.
I am so impressed about this. I've never seen it. It's one of a kind, I think, what happens here in the United States.
But it was a study in contrasts out in the stadium parking lots. Here's how the other half spent the hours leading up to the game: good old-fashioned tailgate parties. It was here you found most of the die-hard Broncos fans.
Here we go, Broncos! Here we go! Here we go, Broncos! Here we go!
Go, Broncos! The parking lot set found plenty of ways to while away the hours. How about a barbecue? Even Redskins fans have to eat. And who says the fancy footwork only happens on the field? As for these hams, well, there's always a few in every crowd.
We'll be bringing home the bacon when we win. When we win! We'll be bringing home the bacon, 'cause there ain't no mistaking. We'll be bringing home the bacon when we win.
Well, despite the outcome of today's game, those fans say they won't change the lyrics to their tune. A tough break today for the Broncos and their fans as well. But as they say, there's always next year. Ed and Ward?
Boy, I think I heard that last year too, Monica. All right, thanks a lot. Adding a bit of insult to injury, Broncos season tickets are going to be more expensive next year. They're going to be going up by 13%, actually more than 13%. The Broncos organization sent season ticket holders notice of the increase last week. The letter said the increase was due to escalating operating costs and that the increase was unavoidable.
Perhaps one of the more masochistic things to do at this point is to take the newspaper, and I have the sports section from the Rocky Mountain News this morning, and just read some of the headlines now that we know how it's turned out. Here's one that Dick Connor wrote, and the headline is, "Stigma as a loser is difficult to shake," and think how much more difficult it is going to be with the nation now. Defense strategy critical, how true that is. And Broncos gear up to stop run. That, of course, is what they were unable to do.
That became something of a joke by the fourth quarter.
Absolutely. We're going to go back out to Steve Alvarez and Tom Green. To be very honest with you, we've had camera difficulties in the Bronco locker room, so we got out the tape recorder, the video recorder, and got some sound with Bronco players, and hopefully that's what you have now, right, gents?
That is absolutely correct, sir. You mentioned the key here, that the defensive philosophy will be the key, and both Tom and I agree that there should have been a more attacking approach by the Broncos, not just early as there were, you know, in the first half of the first quarter, but throughout the game. They gave Doug Williams too much time to find receivers, and I think that's what killed the Broncos defense.
See, I think philosophy is a long-term question. I think what it came down to today was execution. The Broncos did have a plan. They obviously thought it was an effective one. They just didn't execute. So let's go to the locker room and hear from some of the defensive players now.
No, I don't think they're that much better than the Broncos. I think they played that much better than the Broncos today. I think if we played them another day, you know, it might be closer. It's hard to say. They played very well. They deserve to be champions. You know, we can't make any excuses. We lost the game.
You know, I'd just like to say, I'm down basically to more than just a loss, because, you know, the Bronco fans and the city of Denver have been great to us this year, and we were sure looking forward to bringing back the crown this year.
No missed assignments, no. They just executed pretty well. Probably as good as anybody's ever executed against us in that quarter.
When you see a team score that many points on one quarter and you turn the tide, and you come into the locker room with the attitude, well, we've seen other teams do it. We've done it before. There is an opportunity to come back. It'd be the greatest comeback in the history of the Super Bowl, but we really felt inside when we came out in the second half that we could do that.
Testament to the Broncos. They felt at halftime they still could come out and win this football game, but combination of the defense not stopping Doug Williams, and then the offense got cold, and it was just too late.
The important thing now is dissection and trying to keep a cool head. There's no sense in making radical changes. This is a team that's been to the Super Bowl 2 years in a row. I think some fine adjustments are what's needed. Ward, Ed?
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. We appreciate it. Once again, a reminder that the homecoming parade is still scheduled at 3:30 tomorrow afternoon. We'll be covering it live, and we'll see you at 10 o'clock tonight. Join us then. Good night. We have had trouble getting a live shot from the locker room. Sometimes those things happen. We apologize for that. We will have complete details tonight. Locker room reaction at 10 o'clock. Our newscast begins in about a half an hour. Again, we want to give you a reminder that there will be a homecoming parade to welcome back the Broncos tomorrow afternoon. It is scheduled to start at 3:30 in the afternoon. And we have a map for you now. The parade will run from 17th and Larimer down Broadway, and then south to 14th and west to Civic Center Park. Parade organizers originally were expecting about 250,000 people. We assume that that still is the estimate that they're going to have there tomorrow.
And of course, Channel 9 will cover the parade. We'll have a fairly good-sized staff out there, and we will cover most of it, if not all of it, beginning at 3:30 tomorrow afternoon. That's the plan as of now anyway. We'll see you at 10.
Good night.